Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Morning. Oh, it's actually afternoon now. Sorry. Before we get started and into this panel, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. For those that don't know me, my name is Bree. I'm the program manager from Kindred, and I'm joining today from the land of the Murrumbidgee people of the Yuin Nation. Thank you, Heather, Tracey and Ainsley, for joining us to share your family's experience with inclusion in the local community. We know that children with disabilities thrive when they are included. Groups such as dance clubs, creative arts groups, sporting teams and other recreational activities are a fundamental part of childhood. They offer opportunities to learn new skills, make friendships and experience a sense of belonging. Unfortunately, there still are numerous barriers to accessing mainstream activities for children with disability. In the 2022 Community and Me survey, the most common barriers to participation included sensory overload and environmental factors. This was closely followed by attitudes, the pressure to fit in, the stigma of disability and often discrimination. Community inclusion of children with disability often comes down to parents and carers like yourselves, searching extensively for opportunities, working creatively with providers to overcome barriers, and advocating for their children to be included alongside their peers. I hope that those that are watching, by hearing the personal experience of you all today and how you've actually successfully engaged your children in their local community activities, that parents watching may feel more confident to take that first step towards inclusion for their child in their own local community. So today we're going to hear from each of our panelists and then we're going to come together for a short conversation. We're going to hear from Tracey. Tracey is a kindergarten teacher. Bear with me. She's also a mother of 5. Her youngest daughter, Aubrey, is who brings Tracey to this panel today. And I imagine you have a very, very busy household. Aubrey is a very active young lady. Aubrey, sorry, is a very active young lady and participates in various community activities. I've loved hearing about the opportunities you've actually provided for Aubrey in our earlier talks. And I'll hand over to you and you can share how you support Aubrey to live her best life.
Okay, so as Bree said, we do have 5 children between us. They range in age from 27 down to Aubrey, who is now 7. So she has lots of role models around her to, that sort of show her what she's capable of in life. So our view has always been with Aubrey that she should have the same opportunities as her siblings have had. And they've been very active in the community. They've done scouts and sports and just about everything, dancing that you can think of, across what is now 25 years. As you can see, she's just popped her head in to say hi. So our journey with Aubrey probably started, as you can see, these photos that are up. This is Aubrey's very first dancing concert, the photo on the left in her little blue outfit. She'd been dancing for about 6 or 8 weeks when we had that concert. Get out, please, kid. And we wanted her to get involved with just to get out and do stuff. So we originally started with gymnastics, kinder gym, thinking it'd be really good for physio. Did that for a few months, but then realised she wasn't really interested in the gymnastics. She was more interested in dancing in front of the speakers at the front of the room. So we had a look around in our local community and we found a local dance studio who ran programs called Ready, Set, Dance and Ready, Set, Ballet, which is an Australian program designed for preschoolers. So I thought, let's give it a go. Took her down. And of course, after the first week, she absolutely loved it. She was in her element. It was all play-based. So it was just, as far as she was concerned, it was fun. So fast forward, she's now 7. She's been dancing with the same studio for that entire time. And the photo on the right is her last dance concert at the end of last year. And this lovely young lady who is in the photo with her is a student teacher who has worked with Aubrey for the last 3 years. This was a program put in place by the dance school to support their seniors within the dance school to teach them the skills they need for becoming a dance teacher. And Liz herself has dyslexia, but she is phenomenal with Aubrey. She's there every week with her. She supports her with her toileting, and she's just there, and she loves her. So for us, that journey with this particular dance studio has been very positive. The owner has a view that all children should have the opportunity to participate in whatever capacity they're able to. So we've worked closely with them to make sure that Aubrey's in the right settings, and she absolutely loves it. So from dancing, we built on from dancing, and we introduced Aubrey to little athletics. And this was at the end of club championships at the end of this season just finished. And as you can see, she is just one of the kids. She has done under sixes and under sevens in one of our local athletics clubs. This journey was a little bumpier. I did try and get her into a club very close to home, but did come against a little bit of a barrier in just getting someone to talk to me, to reassure me. Kept getting, where all volunteers just come down and talk to us on the night. Well, no, I just want to know that you guys are going to be able to support her needs. And when they couldn't, I cut my losses on them. I went back onto Facebook. I found another local club, sent a message, and within 10 minutes, I had a response and a phone call, and had a very good chat with the president of the club, who through local connections also happened to be a teacher at my son's school, but made that connection and said, yep, there's absolutely no reason why Aubrey can't come down and have a go. She came down, she had a go, she's been doing it for 2 seasons, and she absolutely loves it. Her age manager is one of the other parents, and everybody down there gives Aubrey the encouragement that she needs. She does her best and she beats her personal bests. Each week she goes, she has another go, she gets a little bit faster when she does 100 meters. She jumps a little bit further in long jump. She knows how to do discus. She knows how to do shot put. She follows the technique, and she's learned some amazing skills. The other side of it, and the therapy head comes on, it's great physio. She's out with her friends. She's out and being engaged. So we'll continue athletics, and we will look further into having her disability categorized. She can be put into her own category as she gets older. But obviously at 7, it's not really an issue. So she absolutely loves that. We are also a scouting family. So Aubrey's 3 older siblings have all been involved in Scouts. My eldest son turns 24 very soon, and he's still a rover. He's been involved since he started Joey's at 7. And Scouting for him was that thing that brought my shy little boy out of his shell. He's been to New Zealand, he's been to interstate jamborees, he's been to just come back from Tanzania on a rover moot and had an amazing time. So for us, Scouts was almost a not negotiable for Aubrey. We again had a good look around our local area to see what Scout groups actually fitted in, 1, with our busy timetable, and 2, also that were going to be the right fit for Aubrey. So we travel about 25 minutes to a local Scout group, and this is a photo of our little girl making her promise as a Joey and getting her badges. She absolutely loves Joey's. She's accepted as just being Aubrey, and the leaders have made any adjustment that's been required. They've just made it. I do stay at Joey's because we are still on a toileting journey. So I registered as a parent helper, and I am there every week as a parent helper, and I help the leaders out, get in and do activities with the kids, and if needed, support Aubrey. So if you were looking for something that you want your children to be involved in, don't be afraid to get in there and be part of it too. I get just as much out of going to Joey's as she does. We went on a Joey camp recently, and Mummy got to go. And it was a great weekend. We got to go canoeing. We got to do fun stuff with the other kids, and she thrives there. So get involved. It makes it a more enjoyable experience for both you and your children. The most recent of our adventures has been teaching Aubrey, or giving Aubrey the opportunity to learn to ride a horse. If any of the journeys has been a little bit bumpy, this has probably been the one that has. It was hubby's baby. He wanted her to have a pony ride. So we had a look around. He made numerous phone calls in our local area to try and find a riding school that would take her for a pony ride, just to see if she liked it. Nobody in our area really, they either didn't bother returning his calls, they said she was too young, or what was a little disappointing was the riding for disabled in our area don't deal with children. They only deal with young adults. So a riding school at Centennial Park got back to us and said, sure, bring her down for a pony ride. We live in Penrith, so that's about an hour's trip for us. But we toddled off down to the riding school. She had a pony ride on the actual pony that she's riding there in that photo, and fell in love. So we did a few pony rides to make sure that this was something she wanted to do. And then we had a little girl who woke up every morning and saying, morning, mummy, horse riding? Every day. It was, I think it was decided that we were going to continue with riding lessons. So now every Saturday morning, we toddle off to Centennial Park for a riding lesson. And this is her instructor that she currently has, who is amazing with her. During the holidays, we also encourage her and we enroll her for holiday horse riding camp. So she spends an entire day in the stables. She gets to ride, she gets to sort out food, as you can see in the photo, she gets to groom the horses, water them, all of the aspects that are involved in looking after a horse and riding. And when she's there, she's just like one of the other kids. The expectation is that she listens. The expectation is that she joins in and participates as best she can. And she has a ball. She also falls asleep in the car every afternoon coming home from it, because it's such a big day that she is exhausted, but it's all worth it. And yes, it's definitely good for her core. She's become a lot stronger. She's learning to trot. She has had a couple of falls off the horse, but in true form, it's dust yourself off, jump back up and keep going. And she has. So if I had any advice for parents, it's give things a go, work from their interests, try things. If they don't work, try something else. Expect that you be included, but also work with the organisations that you want your child to participate in so that you can solve problems if they come up. And just have fun. Sometimes we wanted to not have to be the person doing things with her all the time. So we have used support workers and individual skills workers to work with Aubrey in some environments so that we can be the parent watching from the sidelines. But other times, like Scouts, I'm happy to be involved, and I'm happy to get in there and do things with my daughter, just the same way that I've done with my older children. We watched their sport, we got involved, we've coached their teams, we've managed their teams. So it's about those same opportunities and giving her all of the opportunities of living her best life, which, as you can see, we've got a little girl who has some amazing opportunities. So yeah, that's our Aubrey.
Wonderful. I'm actually a little bit jealous of Aubrey's activities. They all sound wonderful, and just goes to show how important that perseverance from parents is. Like, you persevered, you kept on going. But I also love how you mentioned how Joey's, it's good for you too. Like a big part of being part of organisations and community for parents as well, is making friends with the other parents. I know from my children being in sporting teams, like we all get together, we go out for dinner together. So it's just that flow and effect of being part of a team or an organization, and that impact that it can have. So Heather is going to share her daughter's love of art. Heather is mum to Erica and Ariana and lives in Sydney with her husband. Heather is actually a wonderful contributor to this space. You often see that some of her pieces that she writes and presents, and she's always sharing her experience and insight to help other families to navigate this journey. I've actually seen some of Ariana's art, and she is very talented. You must be incredibly proud. But I do know it's been a journey, so I'll hand it over for you to now share some more.
So just a little bit of a background on my family. And Ariana. So she's currently 7 years old, and she's in year 1 at her mainstream local public school. She is very loving and very fun, and has a good sense of humor, and she's extremely creative. So this has only really come about the last probably 3 years that we've really seen this real growing interest in all things craft and art. Yeah, she's always done lots of constructions of things, but yeah, it sort of has come to light that she's just got this incredible imagination. So she spends all day, you know, making things from boxes. You can hear the sort of drawing of the sellotape all day, the cutting. We've got pieces of paper all over the house. Loves making little books and you know, asking us to buy her new pens. She's learning to keep the lids on now afterwards, so that's really key. She has Soto syndrome, so that's a genetic rare condition, 1 in every 14,000, and with that comes an increase in height. So she's a lot taller than her peers. She's about 3 years bone age advanced. So she's very tall for her age. So people think she's older, which has its own challenges. And she also has developmental delay, and we've recently found out she's autistic, and she's also, we've just received a diagnosis of ADD. So that is challenges in executive function, mainly for Ari. She loves climbing. She loves being in her scooter, and she's very social, but she's better in group settings and finds one-on-one a little bit more challenging. She has an older sister, Erica, who she adores and has been instrumental in Ari leading a very active life, because she's always got someone there to really sort of give her a helping hand and just encourage her to move forward. She's very motivated by copying other kids, and she learns from others. She loves swimming, and she's a real fish. So as you can see from the images, I like to just get her out and about all the time as much as I can. Just like any parent, I just want my daughter to live a full life and to be happy, and have all the experiences that her typical sister gets to experience, but not necessarily the same, but their own things. So like any pair of siblings, you know, some will be more good at some sports, some might have an interest in dance, some might have, you know, in our case, Ariana has shown this interest in creative things. And she also loves climbing. So the other day we took her, I just put an image there, we took her to the treetop climbing, and we had a really positive experience there. They were very inclusive. She doesn't mind heights. So, you know, you just got to give these things a go, as Aubrey's mum mentioned. That really helps. If you don't give it a go, you never really know. And I do understand the nerves. Like, you know, I was very nervous as to how it would go, and regulation can be challenging sometimes with Ari. She not has extreme meltdowns, but she can have some anxiety. So, you know, my heart was definitely in my stomach taking her out, but you know, she did really well, and I'm just really happy that she can have these experiences to live a full life. So that's a little bit about Ari. So we've done some activities in the past. We've done a lot of sort of, I guess initially I was sort of encouraged to do the sort of disability related activities. So we have her in Rainbow Club for swimming with children with disability one-on-one. and we had her in dancing for children with a disability. But what I found is that they weren't necessarily the right environments for her, not because she doesn't have a significant disability, there are challenges, but because she wasn't really very well regulated with all the other kids around who maybe also were not so well regulated. And also the lack of structure was really hard for her. So she would basically just muck around, and I found she wasn't following any of the dancing instructions, and she just ran around the room, and it just wasn't, we weren't getting anything out of it basically. And the swimming lessons as well, unless she has a teacher that's really structured and there's a certain routine, she definitely thrives on rules and routines. That's part of her autistic presentation. We still do swimming. She does, I think, need a certain amount of extra support, but she's very good at it. And she finds now we pair her with another child with a disability. So I guess my overall end goal would be for her to be, in a regular swimming class with her peers. But I feel like with Ariana, sometimes there's a journey to get there. So, once she's strong enough and doing her strokes, we might move to that point. But she gets a lot of, what I found is that with Ari, it's better actually that she is in a sort of a group setting to some extent, because she definitely learns from copying from her peers. So when she got her autism diagnosis, that really made me think about the kinds of activities that would sort of help her thrive. The new information about her and the way that her neurodiversity, made it clear with the recommendations from the report that we needed to find things that would support her interests, that were in a group setting rather than one-on-one, and that for her, friendships might not necessarily be so one-on-one in a traditional sense, and she would still consider a friendship just someone who does an activity that she loves with them. So, hearing that from autistic voices in the community, I looked for an activity that she could do that she loves with other peers. And so art class just seemed to make sense because that is the activity she loves, and it's a group thing, but it's also individual in that it doesn't affect her, her being good or bad at art won't affect the next person next to her being good or bad at art, and so that's one of the great things about art. It's individual, but it's also can be done in a group. So I reached out for an art teacher, and I actually did have one say, oh, your daughter has a disability, when I mentioned it over the phone. She'd never met my daughter and didn't know anything about her disability at all or what her care needs were. But she said, oh, I don't take kids with disabilities. And I thought, okay, that's a very blanket sort of statement. And I mentioned that to her. I said, oh, that's really interesting that you say that, because, you haven't really asked me about what my daughter's care needs are or support needs are, or, how that she might present. And I just sort of educated her that disability can present itself in many ways, and that, if she's had one experience with one child, that won't mean that every child, that she won't be able to provide them the environment that child needs, even though she is a sort of a solo instructor. And I actually felt that was very limiting, and I mentioned that to her, but we didn't go for her as an option, and because of that. And then later on, funnily enough, she actually ran a group class and actually texted me and said, I'd like to invite Ariana to this holiday group if she would like to be part of it. So I was happy that she was sort of open and educated by that conversation. But, we'd already found, thankfully, a art class up the road that was, welcome and open to taking children with a disability. And in fact, they have a few kids with various diverse differences. There's a girl with a facial difference that sort of looks different to her peers, and she does the art class every week. And I think that's been good for her for friendships. And they've had kids in the past with a variety of different disabilities. But this has been really amazing for us, and we've had a really positive experience from us. And every week Ariana will ask, is it my art class day today? And as you can see, she's, really thriving with her art. It's been a great activity for friendships, although we haven't really got to know any of the group individually that much, because I sort of drop her off and pick her up. I think over time we will. It's only been one term. and we've renewed for the second. So I think over time we will start to get to know the other parents and kids. She's doing something she's actually good at. And that was really key for me, because I was like, you know, what I find with kids with a disability is that kids who are typically developing, you usually do outside activities with them that are things that they enjoy and things that they generally have strengths with. So whereas kids with disability, because of all the therapies they do, they tend to spend a lot of their spare time doing things that they're maybe not so good at. So I thought that's not great for your self-esteem. So I wanted her to do things that she was naturally good at and enjoys. So, you know, just like her sister. So I guess that's my benchmark, is like, what does her sister have access to, and why would I not be able to give Ariana the same access to that? She also has something that, you know, we always encourage her sister's netball and, you know, activities that she's really good at. And, you know, I wanted Ari to have something that, you know, she was good at, that we could talk about and encourage her, you know, that she's also, we can celebrate. So she looks forward to it. So it's mainly for self-esteem building, I think, is probably my main goal from art class, and for friendship development. I like the idea that it's inclusive with her peers that she can learn from, and they can also learn from her, and it builds on her interest and passion. Fine motor skills is really a bonus, because I do believe my daughter is, you know, she's quite good at art, so it's not necessarily something that she needs help in as such, but, you know, it's a bonus if she can build on that. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. I love that you mentioned around doing those disability specific activities to begin with, because sometimes they can be a stepping stone. And we are talking about steps towards inclusion, and for some people it might be around, you know, learning a skill before they do move over to a mainstream thing. So I think a lot of families out there are doing that. But I do love that both yourself and Tracey have sort of said, like, you know, the expectation for our children who have a disability is the same as what we have for our children that don't. So, like, I love that you set those benchmarks and said, well, if, you know, if my child that doesn't have a disability is going to do this, this, and this, and have access to the community, why can't my child with disability do that? So it's really lovely. I'm going to hear from Ainsley. Ainsley has over 20 years of experience as a primary school teacher, and her most recent roles have been supporting students and families, including as an education advisor and a specialist teacher. Ainsley has 2 children and will share her son Will's experience with Scouts and how Will has developed in many aspects over his life. So I'll hand it over to you, Ainsley. I'm looking forward to hearing all about Will's experience.
So I'm going to talk about my young man, Will, this gorgeous young fellow. Unlike the previous 2 parents, we're a little bit later to coming to community inclusion, unfortunately. A little bit like Kurt spoke about before, we were unknowingly sort of going along towards that path of isolation. And when Will was 11, we really decided to take a new path for his life and really brave up as a family and take some bold steps that we hadn't taken before. So part of that was scouting. So yeah, I guess part of the reason why we didn't attempt it earlier was around safety, but also that fear of rejection, and not thinking that our community was as inclusive as we now know they are. So this is Will here this is nearly 3 years ago, I think, or pretty much 3 years ago, when he was first doing, I'm trying to think what they call it now, so I've lost it, but when he was first becoming a Scout. And yeah, look, we first went along to that meeting with the group leader, and I remember I was almost shaking in my boots, and it was that fear of rejection. But I went in, we recently made a 1-page profile and a statement of vision for Will and his life, and I went in with those and was very pleased to find her so welcoming. She didn't really bat an eyelid with looking at having Will as part of the group. And I spoke about possibly him needing some paid support to be at Scouts, and she said, look, our leaders and our peers in this scouting group are actually really good. Let's just give it a go first and see how Will goes and how everyone goes before we sort of talk about paid supports. And sure enough, yeah, everyone just rose to the occasion, and we really haven't looked back. So I might get the next slide up, which hopefully has some of the wonderful things that Will's been up to and doing. So I guess the main wonderful thing for Scouts is the friendships that Will has developed. So he's got now 2 really close friends in Scouts and many other good friends within the group as well, within his scouting group. And they just seem to have their own natural language. So Will is an AAC user. He's only still just very beginning, like everyone else with him, and he's minimal speaking. So he just says a few words a day, and those can be unclear. Yet his friends at Scouts just seem to have their own language. He can head off with them and they have their own little signs and jokes and carry on. And yeah, he's just off and at him when he's at Scouts. So now when we pull up at night time on a Friday night, he just jumps out of the car and runs in. And and then, yeah, just last night they had their yearly sort of theatre show, which is like a night of skits and fun. And yeah, just enjoying every moment of it with his friends. So thinking now with these friends, I can see the potential for lifelong friends with them. And when Will isn't able to make a Scout session or a camp, I get messages off the other parents saying, "Where's Will?" And we're missing him. So it's so beautiful to see, you know, that he's actually missed when he's not there, and they're disappointed if he isn't able to make it. I might get the next slide up. So part of Scouts, like on that earlier page too, and with this page here, has been lots of new challenges for Will. At first I was really fearful, and I don't think I realised how capable my son was. That's what Scouts has really shown me. I was probably holding back on doing a lot of things for Will, and for him doing things, I realised. And him having peers alongside him too to do them, I think has been great for him, because you're seeing his peers do it, off he goes. If he was to be doing it just with his family, he may not be taking the steps that he did. On the earlier slide, I had a photo of Will up the top of the treetops with a friend. So we arrived to that day. It was a treetop climb day. And Will was very uncertain around what to do. And one of his close Scout mates has come up and said, "I'll stick with you, Will. Well, we'll go through this together." And when you come to the changeovers between the sets of climbs, it's quite technical the way you've got to change over all the ropes and the holders and things like that. And Will's fine motor isn't really up for that. And his friend just helped him, went through it all and stuck with him. And it was just another sign of how great Scouts has been. And just seeing the other children too, the growth that they have and what they're learning from supporting Will. So I think everyone can now see that, you know, Will brings so much to the scouting group. So yeah, here he is doing some abseiling, which is pretty incredible, off the Kangaroo Point cliffs in Brisbane there. And the adventures that they have are many and varied, such as this one where they went through a nighttime session, which again worried me. Will in the city at nighttime with a group of 20, 30 Scouts and just a couple of adults roaming through on a Friday night. I was concerned, but again, rose to the occasion, had a great night. It was they went for Remembrance Day, so they went around sort of a trail through the city. So the variety of things too is really helping us see what Will might like career-wise once he finishes school. So seeing what things he's really enjoying at Scouts has been helpful too. Okay, I've got another slide, I think. From what my experience has been with families with disability and Will's peers with disability, is that those opportunities to participate and give back to the community aren't always thought about for people with disability. Yet with Scouts, it's really core to what they do. So Will just beams with pride when he gets to participate in things like the river cleanups or a bush care cleanup, Anzac Day marches, or here with a fundraiser where we deliver fertiliser products twice a year around the community, and he gets to meet the people that he delivers things through to. So that's been really good, and for him to learn that he very much is part of the community and is seen as a valued contributor. Pre-Scouts, we had a young man who used to get very stressed in crowds and in busy places, and to see him part of the local Anzac parade with noise and thousands of people and so much going on, you could see that arrow pointing to him there, he's just beaming with pride. Was just amazing. And I guess it just shows to me that when he feels that sense of belonging, those the sensory concerns seem to drop down for him, that he feels safe, he feels he belongs, and he can tolerate and make the most of it because he feels safe with his peers. And I might have one last slide. So yeah, it's just talking about the opportunities that Scouts is opening up for us now. So with Scouting, there is special interest badges that they can work towards. So his Scout leader was talking to me around what Will might like to do. And we sort of talked about bringing his AAC and getting the Scouting group more across how his AAC works, and thought that could be a good opportunity for him to develop a presentation. So he and I worked on a presentation for Scouts, which then led to just us seeing how incredible he was at and calm at presenting to the group. And then when I was asked by one of the local universities, one of the lecturers, I was sort of telling her around what Will had been doing at Scouts, and she said, well, would Will like to do a presentation for our student high school teachers, our pre-service high school teachers, on what adjustments work well for him at school, and would his teachers from school be interested in coming along as well. So this was to over 100 people. It was recorded for more. There was big people from the department there, huge auditorium, and he just rocked it. And it just something I would never fathom 3 or 4 years ago we were doing, and now it just opened up so many more new opportunities for us. So if there's anything I could probably tell new parents, it would be, start early, don't leave it to your 11. There's so many opportunities we missed out on. I'm so glad we're there now. And the community can be much more inclusive than what you imagine. And just seeing the beauty of what Will brings now to our local area is incredible.
Wonderful, thank you. And I do love that you actually have shared your experience why starting a little bit later, because it just sort of goes to show that it is never too late to start. And it's really lovely to see how well he's doing in that Scout setting. I've been watching the chat, and I feel like there might be a few parents inquiring about Scouts after listening to Tracey talk about Joey's and Ainsley talk about Scouts. But I also really liked how, when he wasn't there, that people missed him. And there is safety in community as well. So when people realise that somebody's away and they ring to check on them, that's something that can flow on into the greater community. And when one day when he may be living independently and somebody hasn't seen him, but somebody does check in, and that's, being a good neighbour. And I just love that flow and effect. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing such great examples of what inclusion in the community can look like. We know there is so much value in hearing the experience of others. Have a little chat now. We've got a bit of time. So I did want to put it to you all, and feel free to jump in, but I'd like to know how being included in the community has benefited your child and your family. Did anyone want to share on that? Tracey, you've taken yourself off silent there. Have you got something you wanted to add?
So for us, we have a very strong tie and connection to the T21 community, and that is really, really important for us. T21 Mums has been a saviour in so many ways over the last 7 years, because we've got mums travelling the same journey and made some really great mates from that. And they will be lifelong friends for me as an adult, but also for my for Aubrey and for my kids. But what we've noticed just within the things that Aubrey does, there was a little girl she went to dancing with when she did preschool programs. Surprise, surprise, we rock up at swimming, and they're swimming at the same time. Different classes, but they're swimming at the same time. So, of course, then she looked forward every week to going to swimming, because she knew her friend was going to be at swimming. And even though they don't necessarily live close to us, they're still connections we have within the community. And those the birthday parties you get invited to through Joey's. She's been to a couple of birthday parties, and funnily enough, one of them was when the little girl's mum asked her who she wanted to come for her birthday party, because it was only a small affair. The first person that she said was Aubrey. Before school friends, before other Joey friends, the first person she said is, I want Aubrey there. And like that, when we found that out, we went, well, we know she's in the right place. But again, that built friendships for us. And we're now quite good mates with the family as well. So it gives her those opportunities we want for her, but it builds a broader circle for us of different people that we can interact with. And I get the scouting thing. I'm a scouting mum from way back, and I'm still good mates with quite a lot of the scouting parents that my older son had made through his involvement with scouting. And those friendships last for life for them too. Brenny's still really good friends with a boy that he went to high school with who was also a scout. They live in different states now, but it doesn't make a difference. Those connections are there. And scouts is one of those things you can make connections across the world with.
Yeah.
So,
interconnected lives, as Kurt said earlier. What about you, Heather? Why or how has it benefited not just Ari but your whole family with her being included in the community?
I think I've always, like, art's not the only activity or the first time she's been included in the community. We live in a sort of a community estate, so we've got like kids all around that sort of all know Ari, and she goes to her local mainstream school. So from that point of view, art, we haven't yet sort of probably unleashed, as I said, had the chance to really build those friendships yet. But just a sort of a practical thing is that we get an hour and a half to ourselves. So from a point of view is like we can drop Ariana off. We know she's safe and cared for and thriving and enjoying herself. Just like when we drop Erica off at dance and we get a bit of a break from her too. And I think on all honesty, for mums of kids with disabilities, sometimes, sometimes you don't have as much of that sort of drop off time that maybe you have with your typical sibling. So I do think that's a sort of important benefit to raise. And it's been nice because me and my husband have some time, by ourselves. So from a family perspective, that's a real benefit, I must say. It's an hour and a half. So it's a nice long break. And also just keeps the kids practically off the screens for, an hour and a half as well. I don't know if, all parents struggle with this sort of screen time. So getting Ariana out and doing activities is, just as important as it is for her to get her sister off the phone and out and about. And not sure if that's the answers you're looking for. But
I was just going to reflect on, like you did say, just getting out and about in your community. So it doesn't necessarily either have to be an organised activity. For some people, it might start being getting into the local park and kicking the ball around.
Yeah. Well, look, I also believe that, some of the reasons our kids with disabilities are held back is because we don't get so much of that natural opportunities to engage with things and play, and they're often sort of held back or protected from those things. And, the way that development works, obviously, from a baby is that, you learn by sort of touching and navigating and trying things. And, I take Ariana as many opportunities to, practice sequencing and practice navigating and problem solving. Today I took her to scootering around with her sister. She gets good fresh air. She gets to climb, and through climbing she gains confidence, and she has motor planning activities. And a lot of my mum friends like, oh, are you worried that she's going to like hurt herself and what have you? And I guess I'm just probably the opposite of a helicopter mum. I like to sort of I sort of feel like all kids need to not hurt themselves, but fall a little, and I guess so I think there's just that natural and I just want her to have a normal, like a typical life and normal access to things that her sister has. And so I just try and replicate that, as much as I can.
It is that thing of, you want them to experience the same things, but you also want them to, you don't want them to hurt themselves and not recover from it, but you want them to hurt themselves and build resilience.
Exactly. You want them to have the same opportunities,
Yeah.
as any child would, and
Yeah.
live a full life.
Yeah.
Falling off the
Absolutely.
horse. Like it kind of panics you when you're standing on the sidelines, standing outside the arena and you watch her and she just slides off the saddle. And it's like, oh, Katie. And she's like, oh, okay. And Paul, the instructor, I think.
And it's and
Just
recover.
got it.
Like Ari used to, and it helps with things like anxiety. And also some of it with Ari has been sensory, related stuff. So, getting her out and about, like unfortunately exposure is basically the solution to anxiety generally. And so, but obviously exposure in a way that's safe. And so that's how we all overcome anxiety. So for Ari, just exposure to sounds and lights and noise and crowds without it being overwhelming and all at once, I think also is very important for her sensory development and regulation. And I have to say it's got a lot easier taking Ari out and about. Obviously she's gained skills, so that helps. So she's more independent physically, but also just regulation wise, I think she just gets used to. And I actually think she needs a little bit of outdoor play, like every kid actually does, in order to not be a complete pain at home.
I imagine, Ainsley, I imagine you probably felt a bit the same about Heather and Tracey when Will first started Scouts, like just that fear of, him going abseiling and, doing all these things. How has that benefited you guys? Like, I'm sure it would have been a little bit of a leap of faith and
Yeah, it was a big leap of faith. But yeah, certainly benefited us because now when other areas of his life bring up, okay, we're thinking of trying this or doing that, I'll say yes. Scouts
yep.
has always sort of talked us through that before those sort of big events, probably not so much now, but certainly in those early days, what will work for Will, what supports could be put in place, these are our ideas. So that's been really good. And they used to send through photos at the event because I wasn't often there, just sort of as a little check-in to show me that he's doing well and okay. So they recognised that as well. But also, it, as you mentioned before, it builds his safety in the community. So even though I had those fears around his safety with those activities, it's actually now creating a more safe life for him, really. Like, for example, recently he lost something locally and it went up on the local Facebook page. And I had about 12 of the Scout parents message me saying, did you know someone's found Will's whatever it was? So, again, that being known locally is adding to his safety immensely. So.
Yeah. And I do remember in our previous talks, you sort of talked about that flow and effect to school as well. Now that he's in high school, that some of the older Scouts were at high school. And so he had a support network there as well.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the Scout leaders is a teacher aide at school. So when they're doing things like manual arts or whatever, they'll actually go to her because they know that, Scouts is usually more comfortable with those high risk situations and talk around, how would this work for Will and how can we support him with it. So that's really good too, knowing that there's that crossover.
Yeah. Got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to get you all to answer this question, but I'm going to give you a time limit of maybe a minute. Why is inclusion important to you?
Inclusion is giving her or giving Aubrey the same opportunities as her siblings have been able to have. My mantra with all of my kids is I'm not raising useless children. And I know that sounds pretty brutal, but I'm not around forever. I'm not going to live forever. My kids are hopefully going to outlive me. So they need to have the skills, whether they've got a disability or not, to live their best life. So for Aubrey, that's probably a little more important than it is for my neurotypical children. They'll get it. I know they'll get it. And they are doing it. Two already. One's out of the house, one's ready to go. The other one's finishing his HSC. They're all growing up. They're all becoming very independent adults. Aubrey needs that too, but Aubrey needs to have she has to have the people around her that include her so that she is capable of living her best life and having the best opportunities she can for a very long and happy and busy and engaged life.
Love it. Who wants to go next?
I was just going to add to that. I very much agree with all that was said there, but my little bit that I probably could add is around the mental health. So since Will's been included in our local community and we've really done that work as a family, his mental health has improved immensely, and so has our families. So, and I can see he's improving the mental health of many around him too. Yeah. So when our kids are there and others see them being supported well, they sense that, oh, okay, so if I have trouble, there's a safety net here. It just brings the anxiety down for everybody.
I love that. Inclusion really does benefit all. I think Kurt talked about that, and I think the research even says that as well. Heather?
I'll just add that the alternative is segregation and exclusion. So it's basically a human right for me.
Yep.
Like, it just comes down to, we shouldn't really need to argue the case for inclusion, like, because at the end of the day, no one should accept exclusion and and I don't think, I think I'm hoping that with all our families getting out and about, keeping our kids visible in the communities in whatever capacities, safe and helps them thrive, that just becomes normalized. And then, people are going to ask in the future, why wouldn't you have a space for a child with a disability, rather than us having to have conversations around the benefits of inclusion? I kind of hope that that's something that the next generation, it'll just be a given. No, maybe I'm a bit like, glass half full sometimes, but that, that's idealistic, but that's my wish for the world.
I've actually got, as part of my son's vision, is to be part of the community, to be seen in the community, and to be safe in the community. So Heather, Tracey, Ainsley, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your family story. As a community, if we want true inclusion, it's essential to understand the barriers, what works and what doesn't. I did mention earlier the Community and Me survey. For those who are unfamiliar with it, it's an opportunity for families of children with disability or delay to share their insights and experiences about participating in community activities in a co-designed family survey. I hope the 2023 Community and Me survey reports fewer barriers to participation and more great examples like the ones we've heard today. So do keep an eye out. The 2023 family survey will be released soon, and we will let you all know when it's available. Thank you to our panelists.